Hello there. You are listening to Advancing Ideas, the Cultivators Community Podcast. Here we share real stories of real people making their ideas happen in big companies. And my guest is Jessica Dixon, the talent development manager at DoorDash, who leads a team that crafts innovative learning solutions for hourly employees and their managers, and who created and runs the NVEST manager training program for frontline leaders that improve their communication and relationship building skills and helps to grow their career. So, welcome, Jessica.
Hi.
Super happy to talk to you. Finally, here we are. So, tell me one thing about you that I can't find on your LinkedIn profile.
There are a lot of things that you can't find on my LinkedIn profile. I'm a mountain biker, big cyclist fan. Just finished watching the Tour de France. That was a lot of fun. I love to bake and read, and I'm a closet nerd.
Is it the bike behind you that you usually use?
That is actually my roommate's bike, but yeah, sometimes mine is up there. It's yellow.
Got it. Got it. What's your relationship with biking? Like, I mean, how do you include it in your daily setup? So, do you do it every day or maybe on weekends? How does it work for you?
Don't do it every day. It's usually a weekend thing, sometimes in the morning. Right now it's too hot, so I'm in Phoenix, and you know, over 100, 110, 115, too hot to be doing that right now. But yeah, when the weather is nice, usually once or twice a week.
Did you try biking in winter?
I've done snow biking, if that's what you mean. Yeah, you use the really fat tires and go over the snow, and that's a lot of fun.
Got it. Got it. So, what was the first time that you felt you've influenced somebody's professional or personal life?
Yeah, the first time, that's a surprisingly hard question. My first career was being a high school English teacher. I taught high school English for 7 years, and actually the first 5 years I taught at a juvenile detention center. So these were kids that made poor decisions in their lives and they got locked up, so to speak. And you don't really think about it, but kids that are locked up, they still have to go to school. Time doesn't stand still for them to figure out their lives. They still have to learn and grow in other ways and in all the ways. So I went into English teaching for a few reasons. I was always really good at English. I enjoyed reading and writing essays, and so it seemed just a natural route. But I also really believe in the fundamental and deep things that an English class has to offer. You can read a book and your eyes are opened to other experiences, or you can read a book and you feel seen for the first time. You also learn how to communicate with others and express yourself. And these are like real human skills, life skills, but professional skills too. So anyway, all of that to say that my first experience is like influencing somebody's personal life. And I think their future professional life comes from my time as being an English teacher.
Tell me one story.
Yeah. So I worked with another teacher at the juvie. She's amazing. And we would help the kids put on a variety show of sorts. Basically, their parents would come or their guests would come, and this would happen once a year. And it was a very unique experience and opportunity for them. And so they would do some acting and they would do some talent show type stuff. And there would be a magazine. So in advance of the variety show, I would work with the kids to have them write an article and a poem, and we would compile all of it for a magazine. They would design the magazine too. And then we would get them printed and we would distribute them the night of the variety show. And so that variety show experience was such a confidence booster for those kids. They always surprise themselves by their ability, to get out in front of people and to memorize things, to be vulnerable, to try things. And then also, seeing their writing published, which by the way, those poems are some of the most like raw, beautiful poems I've ever read in my life. That was always really empowering for them too. Um, I don't know if anything is quite as fulfilling as being a teacher. There's just so much opportunity to give and see results, but I have absolutely had those experiences in the corporate space as well. So I want to make sure I say that. But yeah, I've seen a lot of kids' eyes light up and see kind of their spark happen, their confidence be boosted, see them be empowered. So that's been really cool.
How did you feel when you saw their eyes light up?
Uh, it's just super fulfilling. I don't know. You feel like you've done something, you feel like you've contributed to the world in some way.
Talking about your corporate journey, so what is one project or program you are working on to help people make positive changes in their work journeys and maybe overall in the company?
Yeah, I've had a leadership development program that I created, and you mentioned it. It launched last year in 2023, and that is called NVEST. I think, effective leadership is so important. I think we've all heard some version of the phrase that people don't leave companies, they leave their managers. And there's some real truth to that. People managers are these force multipliers for good or for bad. And you want it to be for good, of course. You want people managers to develop professional relationships with their teams, to create positive culture, to lead performance, and so many things. And yet people managers are often undertrained in those things, right? And I think it was Gallup that did the research and found that 70% of the variance in team engagement is determined solely by the manager. So the hope of my NVEST program was to positively impact the professional stories of these people managers, to enrich their experiences and give them the tools they need to feel less stressed, more equipped, and successful. And it's also the hope that their team feels the impact of their NVEST learnings too, right? A ripple effect of sorts. So we're in July of 2024 now. We've had 7 cohorts graduate from the program. And it's been really good. Basically, the program targets 5 specific skills that business partners helped me to identify as a need. And it's been really cool to experience its impact. I issue pre-program, post-program, and then 30-day post-program surveys to the participants as well as their managers. So I have kind of quantitative and qualitative data, and I've just been blown away by how appreciative everyone is, how satisfied they've been with the experience, and how they consistently report growth.
What is the backstory of the NVEST program? Why did you decide to work on it?
Yeah, it's a good question. We had other leadership programs at DoorDash, but this particular org and this particular population, it's basically, it's for site managers. They're managers of hourly employees, right? There was no solution that was specific to them. And while some topics, some skills are certainly true across the board for all leaders, for all people managers, right? There are some things that managers of hourly employees experience that managers of salary maybe don't have to deal with as much or at all. And so the thought was to try and better support them, to have a program that was specific with the examples and the approaches that they need to have in mind. And so that was kind of the inception there. It was like, we have this little group of folks that are maybe being not ignored, but not getting the support they need. And so let's make sure we can create a program for them.
So as of now, you already have 7 cohorts who've done this project, who've gone through this program. And what is the main challenge that you faced, or maybe you are still facing while working on this program?
Yeah, I think the initial challenge for me is that I dealt with a lot of doubt,
Hmm.
a lot of second guessing myself on whether or not this was really something that people would enjoy, something that people needed, something that would be impactful. Um, in a way, NVEST has been my baby, right? Like from advocating that a program like it exists to doing the discovery work to creating the content, launching the applications and facilitating the sessions and measuring impact. Like I have been, in every detail. And so it feels like this program is my baby, so to speak. It's been a lot of work, but that first set of cohorts, I didn't know if it was going to be worth it until it was worth it.
Hmm.
It was like I put all of this blood, sweat, and tears into something, so to speak, had no idea if it was going to go over well. And then thankfully it did. But that was a big challenge for me, is that like this was months of work and I had to battle doubt and fear throughout the whole thing, you know. Um, I don't have to deal with that so much now because I've gotten the feedback and we've, like I said, gone through 7 cohorts. And so we know that it's going over well. It's being well received. But there's always opportunity for growth too. You think about, does it need to change? Do I tweak it this way? Do I tweak it that way? Kind of the thing that artists always have to do, right? At some point, you just say, it's done.
So am I hearing it correctly that you were mostly working on this program without a feedback before those first few cohorts gone through this program?
Yes. I mean, I will say that I brought in 3 people from that population that I knew probably wouldn't be going through the program. I brought them in and I shared the decks with them in advance and the workbook and everything. So I had their perspective and they were able to give me feedback and I could make small tweaks before it launched. So I wasn't going in totally blind, and that I had the feedback from the 3, audience members, so to speak. But they weren't able to get the full experience. And so you just never know.
How did you choose who to share it with in the beginning?
It's a good question. Honestly, I work quite closely with HRBPs. There's a lot of overlap in our work, and we all care about the growth of our employees, and they tend to be really close to the business. And so they're great people to collaborate with. And so I can reach out to them and I can say, hey, do you know of a few people that would really provide valuable insight and would be excited about this opportunity to take a peek at what we're doing? And so I think that's how I originally got the 3 names.
And what was the hardest part of advocating about this program?
Time. So, business is business. There's always stuff to do, and it's really hard to carve out time for learning and development,
Yeah.
even though we all need it. And I think we all sing its praises, but like when it comes down to it, you're like, oh, I've got this, this, and this, and this on my calendar. Do I actually have time to step away and prioritize myself so that I can go through this development program? And that was actually something that I was really conscious of in creating the program. I didn't want to create something that was going to stretch out over the course of 6 months and be kind of long and grueling and difficult to continue to slot into your weekly or your monthly routine, right? And so I consciously created the program so that it would be more manageable. But still, you have to kind of make the case of like, listen, it's worth it for people to step away from their daily routine, come to this thing for an hour and a half, do the homework, so to speak. Yeah, so convincing folks just to prioritize that for sure.
Name one setback that you had and what did you learn from it?
Ooh, setback. This is honestly, I was going to say this isn't embarrassing. It's really not embarrassing. Everything is a learning opportunity, right? But I drafted, so our first session that we have is 4 hours long. It's the longest session. It's 4 hours. I drafted that entire 4 hour long slide deck, speaker notes and all, without getting feedback on it. And so then I reached out to a few folks to get feedback on it. And, it got ripped apart in a lot of ways. There was a lot of red pen, so to speak, which is to be expected, but it was kind of like, oh, I should have done that earlier, right? And I got really valuable feedback, but I had to redesign the whole thing. So I learned to seek out feedback sooner. Don't wait until you completed the whole 4 hour long thing. But I also learned a lot about learning design through that experience too. I think the first deck was pretty stiff and professional. So I was thinking about adult learners. These aren't kids, but then when I revised it, I redesigned it with like the skeptical learner in mind. And so that means that I made it more interactive, more relatable, more fun. And that approach actually ended up setting the tone for the rest of NVEST and has really contributed to its success. Those are, specific call outs that I get in the feedback.
Sometimes I feel like adults are just grown-up kids, so it's pretty much the same.
Pretty much, yeah.
And how do you ensure that you are getting valuable feedback, really, really that helps you, not just some feedback?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think you have to think really purposely about your measurement strategy. And that should be something that you think about from the very beginning. Is this going to be something where it's longitudinal, where you're getting feedback multiple times over the course of many months, and so you can track how things change? Is it going to be a few moments in time instead? Are you going to reach out to just the participants and the managers, direct reports? Like, there are a lot of ways you can go with it. And there are a lot of reasons to do what you end up doing. So I think just thinking about your measurement strategy from the beginning. And then, of course, there's a lot of science about how to write survey questions, writing them so that they are very clear, writing them with a rating scale that is very clear, and they understand what their choice means, making sure you're not asking double-barreled questions. I feel like that's a trap that people fall into frequently. And then, of course, just thinking about the different dynamics. So, I think you always want to ask questions about the satisfaction of the experience, of course, but also the effectiveness of the program. And then open up with those open questions so they can provide as much qualitative data as they want. They can just write stuff in.
In the survey that you sent out, what is the most valuable and informative question that you also like the most?
Ooh, I think they're all valuable in their own way, but I think the question that gets me the most excited is there's a 30-day survey that we send out. So this is 30 days after their graduation from the program. I believe the statement is, and I'm probably going to butcher this, but it's something to the effect of, I am still using the skills I learned in NVEST. And so if they can strongly agree that they are still using the skills that they learned in NVEST, then that shows a lot of value for the program.
If you had started working on this program now, what is one thing you would have done differently?
I think I would design it to be more scalable. So I know that I designed it obviously with a specific audience in mind, trying to meet their needs. But the way that I created it, it's not something that I can easily then just give to other orgs that may need it, or open it up to other orgs if they need it. And of course, now that I know that it is doing well and people are getting a lot of value from it, I want to be able to spread the impact, right?
Yeah.
I want to be able to open it up. And actually, that is in the works right now in a way. But I'm having to do a lot more shifting. And if I had maybe built it with scale in mind, I wouldn't have to do as much shifting as I am right now.
For all the people who are change makers who want to make some positive changes, for all the cultivators out there, what are the 3 smallest actionable steps to advance and make their ideas happen?
3 smallest actionable steps. This might sound so obvious, but talk to people about your ideas. When I left being an English teacher, I wanted to go into content writing or instructional design because that seemed like a good way to kind of marry the 2 worlds of English teaching and corporate, right? And so I was talking to a lot of people about what I was looking for, and someone surfaced to me this position that they saw at DoorDash called a content and quality associate. And so I was like, oh, it's got a content in the name. Surely it's about content writing. That was not the case at all. It was basically being like a menu editor. And this was back in the day. I've been at DoorDash for almost 7 years now. So this is being a menu editor for DoorDash. And I was like, well, that's, it's not quite what I'm looking for, but DoorDash is exciting and they're, a startup. Who knows where they'll go? And so I'll give it a try and kind of best foot forward, keep my eyes open type of thing. And then, so that's what I did. I joined DoorDash, but then again, I continued to keep talking about my ideas, being a content writer, being an instructional designer. And I was given the opportunity to write the content for a website that we had at the time, which was called the Merchant Help Center. And so I wrote the content, I created videos for it. And then flash forward, we were really starting to grow. And I said, I think we probably need an instructional designer and a trainer. And people listened, and that position was created. And so I became an instructional designer and trainer and grew in that capacity. And then I've been able to jump over into the talent development team. And, I shared this idea I had about creating a program for this audience. It's happened and alive and doing well now, So I think I've kind of gotten into the habit of like having these ideas and thinking like, oh, it'd be really nice if someone would do X thing, or if I could do X thing. And then asking myself like, well, why not me? Like, why can't I do it? Why don't I just talk about it a lot? So yeah, I think everything that I've achieved has started by talking to people about my ideas.
So it's the
That was
first step. Yes.
Yes. Number 2, I would say break your ideas down into small tasks. Like I'm talking tiny milestones. I'm a big checklist person, and I used to have 10 plus tasks on my checklist every day. And some of those tasks would be things like, create a deck on empathy, And because it takes more than one day to make a quality deck on empathy, especially when I have 9+ other things on my checklist, inevitably I would not get that deck done that day. And that approach, it honestly caused me more stress, and it was discouraging. And I also realized that in not breaking things down into really small chunks, I was forgetting things. I wasn't thinking about the small details that matter. And yes, when you force yourself to think about the small details from the beginning, you can more appropriately plan and problem solve. And so now I break down my ideas into really small tasks. I might say something like create 3 slides. I'm not creating a whole deck now. I'm just creating 3 slides. And I might even have a second task for that day that also says create 3 slides. And maybe I only get to one of them. And so the other one goes to the next day. But I don't have a whole deck hanging over my head, and I'm still making progress. So that's the second thing. Third thing, I might say, I talk about this in my NVEST program. It's to schedule accountability check-ins. I think sometimes you are the only person that cares about your idea, which means that you are the only person holding you accountable, right? And so it can be really easy to slip into excuses like, that was an arbitrary date anyway, or, man, I just made that up, or, you can even tell yourself stories like, nobody cares, and nobody's really waiting for this, nobody wants it. And so to combat that, I think you can hold yourself accountable by actually have a meeting on the calendar with yourself where you just take stock of where you are and what you've done and what you need to do. I also like to kind of build what some people call forcing functions into my projects, which I think a lot of people use that in their kind of project management. But it's basically this concept like you have a deadline to do something, and if you don't get it done, it's going to be embarrassing. At least this is the way I think about it. If you don't get it done, it's going to be embarrassing because you told people you were going to have it done, and you want to show up the way that you want to show up, right? So, so I would say talk about your ideas like ad nauseum if you need to. Break your ideas down into small tasks and schedule accountability check-ins.
Jessica, I wish to have the sky as a limit, but time is a limit to our conversation. So the final question. Name one book or podcast or a person from whom you learned the most.
Oh my gosh, you saved the hardest question for last. Oh, you said book, podcast, or person. I don't know if this is who I've learned the most, but who I've been learning a lot from recently. I'm currently in school to get my master's in IO psychology. And so I'm very into Adam Grant right now. And I have read recently his Hidden Potential book, which is really fascinating. And so Hidden Potential, I think I would recommend it if you're interested in your own growth, but also the growth of others. And then Adam Grant, of course, he's just got gems that he shares on social media and LinkedIn, and he has a newsletter and everything. Just a really kind of human-centered kind of science. And I really appreciate that. And I think it helps with the type of work that we do.
Got it, Jessica. Thank you so much for openly sharing your cultivator's journey. And it's such a valuable experience for all the change makers in the world who really want to make a difference.
Of course. Happy to be here.
Thank you very much, and see you in the cultivator community.